キュベロワイヤルは毎年作るわけじゃなくて、本当にいい年だけにしか作らない、ブランドです。で、キュベロワイヤルについては、50% シャルドネで49% ピノノワール。で、ピノムニが1%で、僕が最初、そのピノノワールの、日本に入ってきてるシャンパーニュスタイルって、ピノノワールが結構、主体のものが多いなと思ったんで、そういう質問を事前にしてたんですけども、やっぱり自分たちの、契約畑っていうところが、シャルドネがとってもいい品質のものが多いので、シャルドネの方をちょっと多めにブドウの良さを伝えようと言って、提示は、シャルドネ50%、ピノノワール49%、ピノノウェ1%っていう、セパージュで、出しているそうです。
キュベロワイヤル。
今のはキュベロワイヤルじゃなくて、カープスフォンケルのブリュットです。
わかりました。
はい。で、今、あと、
Yuki-san? Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to ask the questions that you've got on the list for us, or what would you like us to do?
So I have a question. Maybe you can reply in the email. Please continue to tasting if you have a time.
Okay.
Continue the tasting.
Okay. So we've tasted the classic wines now, and then we still have the Gewürztraminer that we need to taste.
Mm-hmm.
So we've tasted the Satin Nectars. Okay.
Mr. Okuda-san is just going to the bathroom, so he will be back in a minute.
So Johan-san, the Cape Sponkel is the first champagne style in South Africa.
That's right. In 1971, the first Cape Sponkel was made by my father, and it was more than 10 years or almost 10 years later before the second wine producer started Method Champenoise. And in 2021, 2 years ago, we celebrated 50 years of the first Cup Classique, as it is known in South Africa, in 2021. So the first Cape Sponkel is now 52 years since the first vintage. And the category in South Africa has now become very successful and very popular. So it is one of the most dynamic wine categories in South Africa. And also for Simonsig in the past a few years, we released the two new labels called the Satin Nectar and the Satin Nectar Rosé, which are both in a demi-sec style. Demi-sec in South Africa has got almost a second name called Nectar. So if it says Nectar, it means that it's sweeter. It's not totally brut.
Mm-hmm. By the way, in my question, I feel your MCCs, I mean the bubble is so elegant, small. Other producers sometimes I feel very lively, and the size of a bubble is bigger. But your MCC is very small, and it's like a necklace of pearl.
Yes. I think the mousse and the fineness of the bubble is often the culmination of many different aspects. I think the main thing is that the attention we give to the pressing process, which is everything is done whole bunch pressing, like it is done in champagne. So the grapes are never damaged before it gets into the press, and so once the press is full and we start pressing the cuvee, it's only at that point where the skin of the berry is broken, and the juice and the skin is immediately separated because there's no time for maceration of the juice with the skin, and that is where you start to extract some of the phenols and the anthocyanins and the astringent components coming from the skin. And I think that is not only an factor on the taste, but also it gives you the fineness of the bubble. The other part that I believe is very important is the second fermentation in the bottle, or the prix de mousse, as the French term is, must take place at low temperatures. So it actually does take about 6 weeks in the cellar. So it's a slow, gradual process. And I think the long period of the prix de mousse in the bottle is also contributing to the small bubbles.
I will
So
understand.
firstly, you need a very delicate cuvee, and secondly, you need to have a very slow, controlled second fermentation.
I understood. 宮田さん、シモンシッヒの MCC って、他の、例えば生産者の MCC に比べて、泡がすごくきめが細かいなってずっと思ってたんですよ。
はい。
その理由が今説明した、いわゆる二次発酵に進む前のプレスの条件だったり、ちょっと低温で6週間だけどゆっくり二次発酵させるってところがポイントだっていうふうに今おっしゃってましたね。Yes, please continue.
Okay. We're going to taste the last wine, which is the Gewürztraminer.
Mhm.
So it's the Jamala Gewürztraminer.
So just wanted to see the bottle is okay.
Jamara is the same as a
スペシャルライトハーベストではない。
Late harvest.
another.
2023.
I thought it special like harvest.
Yes. Just going to see because
ゲベルティは今までレイトハーベストっていう
it
スタイル
says
があったん
special
です
at
けど、
harvest. Yes.
ちょっ
It's,
となんか名前がついた。
でも同じ、is that same late harvest?
はい。
Just put the
後ろに
new
スペシャルレイト
nickname.
ハーベストって。
the name,
バックラベルにはスペシャルレイトハーベストって書いてある。
なるほど。
はい。
yes.
同じ。what intonation?
The name Jamala was
Jamala.
Yes.
Jamala.
It's an African language, and it means beauty.
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 The reason is that apart from that, we have names for the Sauvignon Blanc is called the Sunbird Sauvignon Blanc. Pinotage is called the pick of the bunch. Gewürztraminer is very difficult name for people to remember and to understand and to pronounce. We've seen that for many, many years. So we thought we wanted to give it that is easy to pronounce, easy to remember. So the 2023 vintage was the first one we printed Jamala on the label. Because in our own country, it is a wine that is actually growing in popularity, also with a consumer that is not traditional wine drinker. And Gewürztraminer, I know a little bit of German, and I know Gewürz means spice,
Yes.
and Tramin is a town in northern Italy where the variety originated from. So, but if you don't have a bit of German understanding, it is a bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah.
So Jamala, I believe, is a very easy way to remember the name. I always used to tell people at wine shows, it smells like roses and it tastes like lychees. And then they will come back and they will say, oh, I want the wine that smells like roses. So I realized that this is something that will make it easier to understand.
Yes. So maybe in the future, Jamara means Gewürztraminer. It's like a stain, like Schönenberg.
Oh,
Okay.
it's like a.
Hmm?
Just say it again.
Yes, Gewürztraminer it's very difficult to pronunciation, but the Jamara is very simple. So maybe in the future, it's Jamara means Gewürztraminer. It's like a thin,
okay.
like a Schönenberg.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, is this Afrikaans?
No,
No.
no, it's actually a language spoken in a big part of Africa called Swahili.
Mm.
And we wanted something that tells something about the origin of the wine. But Simonsig has been producing Gewürztraminer since the 1970s, when it was first introduced to the South African vineyards. My father was very instrumental in planting the very first Gewürztraminer in South Africa, and I can still remember how we actually grafted some of the Gewürztraminer buds onto other vines to be quicker to expand the planting. And right from the start, we just realized that it is really doing well in our situation. And always from the beginning, it was always a wine with a little bit of residual sugar. So it is a special late harvest, which means that you have to pick the grapes above a certain level of ripeness and sugar content, which is 23 degrees Brix, so 23 grams of sugar per 100 milliliters of juice. So in the case of Gewürztraminer, you do have to wait longer to get to the level where it will qualify as a special late harvest. And it's also something that is controlled by the wine and spirit board. So you cannot just put it on the label. They will have to come and control from the day that you harvest that it is actually complying with the minimum standards. And then we do a cold fermentation in tank in stainless steel. And when the sugar level gets to about 28, that's when we stop fermentation with cooling, and secondly with to remove the yeast by a centrifuge. So when you pick the grapes riper, it also means that the intensity of the fruit and the character of the wine becomes a lot more intense. And if you pick too early, you will have much less of the spiciness about the rose petals, some Turkish delight. So we always want the flavors to be very forward, very expressive.
I understood. Is there any noble rot? You get noble rot? Noble.
Not really. In my career, we've only had 2 vintages where we could make Gewürztraminer with noble rot. The one was 1984 and the other one was 1990. It's got a very thick skin, and it's very unusual to get noble rot on Gewürztraminer. I'm sure if you leave it hanging on the vines for a very long time, there would be a chance, but our climate is some vintages, or most vintages, too dry to get botrytis on Gewürztraminer. What we do get is that some of the berries start to shrivel and they almost become like raisins. So when we pick, we crush and then give it skin contact in the cellar at low temperature overnight. So that helps to extract all the flavors and the characteristics of the fruit from the skins overnight.
Mhm.
'n bietjie sagter praat. Ek kan nie praat as ek
なんか前より、すごく柔らかくなった感じ。なんかもっと、すごい、なんていうんだろう。すごい、ちょっと前、ゲーブルーツ、酸味感じられたじゃないですか。
うん
もちろん甘みの方があるんですけど、酸味がほとんどない。
うん。
でもあるんですよ、多分ね。甘ったるくないんで、酸味あるんですけど、多分飲んだ感じ、そんなに本当に前より酸味を感じないというか。多分これ、空いてたやつなんで、ちょっと酸でてもおかしくないかなと思います。
オッケーオッケ
そんなに前よりだから、甘いっていう表現はちょっと違うんですけど、
ー。
なんか前よりもっと、こう、スムーズな感じがスムーズって言っても、あれですけどね。なんか、前より、なんかすごい、さらーっと入ってくるんですよ。ずっと飲んでられる感じです。なんかもうなんかずーっと飲んでられる感じがした。
やばいやつ。
怖いけど。
やばいやつ。
いや、本当にもうなんか、前はもうちょっとなんか、わかりやすく、ちゃんと酸もあったと思うんです。なんか、スムーズドリンキング。Good.
I wanted is easier to drink than the totally dry one.
Thank you.
Is that sorry? Did I answer your question
Yes,
in
and
style? Yeah.
and the style and the terroir. What about the terroir of the favorite in South Africa? The climate.
Yes, I think compared to Alsace and even Germany, even if you talk about the southern part of Germany, I think their climate would be cooler, and maybe because they are really quite far north, as compared to where we are, 34 degrees south. It is generally speaking, I think, warmer, but the fact that we are situated so close to the Atlantic Ocean, just 15 kilometers away, the influence of the sea and the cool winds coming from the ocean has a huge effect on our climate as well as the terroir. So I think we are blessed in the fact that we have cooler conditions than the most parts of the winelands in South Africa. So the conditions are really ideal. I think of Gewürztraminer, it's not difficult to ripen properly, but you also have to be patient and to leave it on the vines long enough to get to the required sugar level.
Thank you.
The other thing that I can mention is that at Simonsig we have two main soil types, but the one that is the most common is it's called shale. It's like a schist type of soil, and it was settled by water many millions of years ago. So the soils, the schist or shale soils, contain a lot of clay, and the clay is what soaks up the water, because our winter rainfall is when the vines are dormant. So during winter we get most of our rain, so we have a Mediterranean climate, and the growing season starts after the rainy season. So when the soils soak up the rain during winter, it gives the vine enough water to ripen the grapes during the summer months, from September, October, all the way to February, March, when it's harvest time. and then that water soaked up in the clay swirls is what sustains the wine and allows it to ripen the grapes. We do obviously we do irrigate as well, because sometimes a whole summer, a whole growing season, we may only get about 50 millimeters of rain, which means that it's really too little to sustain the vines and enable it to ripen the grapes without going through moisture stress. So if you see the vine is suffering from drought, you just know that it's not going to produce quality. So in that case, we irrigate, but very scientifically, to ensure that the vineyards are not suffering from drought and moisture stress.
Understood.
Do you have any more specific questions?
I think mostly covered. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I have one more question.
Yes, please.
Okay.
About the MCC.
Sorry,
ちょっと、まあもう、
か
ちょっと今音声がね、途切れましたね。はい。だいぶ音声が切れたんで、もう一回質問言ってもらっていいですか？あ、
すいません。
大丈夫。
I'd like to ask about Capus Fonkelbrut Chardonnay.
Yes.
And we tasted the other day this wine in the seminar by the two sommelier, and he said this MCC is a lot of the fruitiness than champagne. So
Not okay.
So
Was that the one with the blue label, the Cuvée Royale?
Cuvée Royale. Cuvée Royale.
No.
The Cuvée Royale.
Sorry.
Okay, the Chardonnay.
No, sir. MCC.
Caps Fonk.
Caps Fonk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, what was the last part of the question?
Aduki, what was the last part of the question?
Yes, there's a two sommelier tasted the MCC, Caps Fonk, and they feel the sweetness is bigger than the normal champagne. Is that any reason for?
No, fruitiness.
Or perception of,
fruitiness?
oh, there's more, okay, more fruitiness as a champagne.
Yes. No,
Champagne.
I agree. I think we often get asked, how do we compare with champagne? And our idea is that we're not trying to make a copy of champagne, because their soils and their climate is very different. The one characteristic that we have is that for us to get the grapes to ripen is really not a problem. But in Champagne, because they are so far north and really a cool climate, they may have difficulty in ripening. So the difference that I feel is making the biggest impact on the wine is the fact that we have a lot of sunshine, and which means that our grapes ripen quite easily, and that results in the base wines and the Cup Classiques to be very the fruitiness is a lot more prominent, which I think is a reflection of the conditions in the vineyard. And so I always think you can taste the sunshine in the glass, and that is I think very much part of the characteristics of Kaapse Vonkel, that it has a certain expression of fruit, and in the case of our Brut Rosé, it is really what we try to do is that the berry fruit must be the most exposed or the expressive character in the wine. In the case of the Kaapse it's also about the age. I really love to drink Kaapse that are more mature, you know, from 4 or 5 years on up to sometimes up to 15 years old. And as time goes on, the development characters, which is more richness, more brioche, more roasted nuts and almonds, that does come with time. So yeah, the vintage, when we sell the current vintage, which in your case will probably be the 2021, it will still be very, very primary, very fresh. But if you keep a bottle for another 2-3 years and cellar it away, you will see that the other flavors will start to become part of the wine and its complexity.
Thank you very much.
I have
It's a pleasure.
question. The number of list, number 4, please look at. What is the reason for not producing non-vintage MCC at your winery?
Yes. I think historically, the very first Kaapse was in 1971, and it was already had a vintage on. The interesting thing is that most wines prior to 1968 or so were sold without vintages on the label in South Africa. That was just a tradition. And it was only when Simonsig started bottling still wines in 1968, it sort of became common practice for the labels to have the vintage. So when the 71 Kaapse was released, there was not even a consideration to have it non-vintage. And then the other reason is that non-vintage champagne is always a blend of many different vintages because of the reserve wines they use. And the reserve wines are used to maintain a certain house style because their vintages can be very variable from one year to the next. So they do blend the wines to keep that certain taste. In South Africa, we don't really have the huge variation from one vintage to the next because for us, ripeness is not a problem. So we don't really have to use reserve wines to maintain a certain style that's or that is known as the Kaapse house style. I have over the years done experiments keeping reserve wines. I even bottled it like Bollinger and fermented it in a bottle. But in the end realized that it is not what we really need. I think for us to have longer time on the yeast is giving us the kind of results. So for the whole category of Cap Classique, the minimum time on yeast was always 9 months. Until now, it has changed to 12. So the producers, we're all part of the Cap Classique Producers Association, and it's like the CIVC in Champagne. We came together and said it will be the best way to improve quality of Cap Classique across the board. And so we decided that the minimum time on yeast must go up to 12 months. And I can also see that in time, it might even go up to 15 months, which will be similar and to what is the case in Champagne. I think that will have a bigger effect. So most Cap Classiques are actually vintage dated. Very few are non-vintage.
I understood.
Yeah. I see you've got a question here about stylistic in taste differences between vintages.
Yes.
We do we do have vintages that differ from others, and the differences are not normally so easily noticeable, and I always find it very difficult to make the judgment very early on. But what you can see is some vintages you just see this is a Pinot Noir vintage. The Pinot Noirs are just all the different vineyards which we vinify separately will just be better than average, and they will all be in a very high level of quality. The next year it might be Chardonnay. The best vintage is obviously when both of them are really outstanding vintages. I know I'm a little bit exposing myself, but my feeling is that for Simonsig and for Kaapse Funkel, when we have a good Chardonnay vintage, that is like the best thing that we can have to have a good Cap Classique vintage. So for me, the Chardonnay is like the engine room. So if you have a really good Chardonnay vintage, the Kaapse Funkel will be a good vintage. Obviously, that doesn't talk to the rosé, which doesn't include Chardonnay. But Kaapse Funkel in the past decade or so has moved from being mostly Pinot Noir driven to Chardonnay driven. So that's also the reason behind that is, I think I've realized that Chardonnay is a very strong part of our Kaapse Funkel blend.
I well understand. Thank you for explanation. ただ、ミスター奥田、奥ちゃん、この後のスケジュールって、
はい。
次のとこに行くのに、誰が迎えに来るとか、自分で行くんだっけ？ウーバーで行くんだっけ？
この次は自分ですね。
それも、なんか、何分にそこ出るって言ってたっけ？
いや、別に、多分、ウーバーすぐ来ますよ、大体。今のところ、大体ウーバーすぐ来てます。
本当。
5分以内ところに。
もしかすると、次のところが迎えに来るかもしれないので、
誰ですか？
次の方が迎えに行くかもしれないので、
迎えに？
ちょっと今連絡再確認してます。まだいるよ。
わかりました。
多分2時15分ぐらいまで行けば大丈夫だと。
はい。全然まだ3時間以上あります。
そこでご飯も食べれるの？
いや、
レストランってあるの？
まあ、ちょっと終わったら僕、ワイナリーちょっと散策しようかなと思って。
わかりました。
もう、あれですか
？Okay.
Okay.
All right. So that concludes the tasting. The other questions I'll answer via email that you had.
Yes.
And then we will quickly do some cellar tour now.
Yes, please.
We'll just take him to see the cellar. And then he gets collected in 1 hour.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Nice to see you, and I hope you feel okay, and that
maybe
your health is good. And
next February, I plan to come to Cape.
Okay.
Next February.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a question. There was recently in October there was a WOSA South African wine tasting event.
Yes.
Are you aware of that? Did you attend it?
Yes, we attended. So many people attend that meeting, that tasting seminar. And Nagisa-san, Miyata-san, we met each other at the tasting sessions. And she kindly interested in Simonsig, and she planned to, special edition in January.
In January, yes. Now our magazine is preparing the South African wine future article. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. But if you do have any other questions, you are more than welcome to send it by email, and we'll do our best to give you the answers or the information you need.
Okay, thank you. It's very pleasure and So nice, great help for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time as well.
Okay.
So, Mr. Sam, just one thing.
Yeah.
Did you have a contact with forwarding agent, Hillebrand, when our current order is picked up?
Okay. The production manager is sitting right behind me. I can ask him. Otherwise, I can let you know.
Okay. So if there is a
Yeah.
time, I want to ask you some sample for red wine, because I or Mr. Okada will show some interest in some red wine for another, portfolio.
Is
So-
it wines that I must send with this order, or is it something he can take with him in his suitcase?
I would talk about. Otherwise, please put the sample to the next our
Into the
current
order.
Yeah.
Okay. Which of the red wines would you be interested in?
So-
The cultivar range or the more premium wines?
Or Mr. Okada will take it later this afternoon.
Okay. So will you let me know which wines I must put with the order, or must I give it to?
What do you mean? I can follow you.
Yeah. So the samples for the red wines, do you
Mhm.
want me to include it with a current order?
Yes. Just one
Okay.
or two. I don't know how many bottles.
One or two bottles.
Maybe.
Okay. Will you let me know which cultivars?
Mr. Okada will tell you later.
Okay. All right.
I choose? 僕
じゃあ
が選べて
赤ワイン、
はい。
時間
赤ワイン
値でちょっと提出してみて、これいいんじゃないかなっていうのを選んで、それでサンプル
うん。
リクエストしてください。
OK。僕がサンプルチョイスしたらいいんですね。
うんうん
これ。OK, OK.
You understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Johansson, thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It's we have to go to the cellar to continue with our visit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
All right. Okay. Good luck. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
ありがとうございました。質問後で、
あ
送りま、あれ